This story is special to me because it's a cross-section of everything that makes my inner nerd sing. It's Marvel history, it's our history, and it's a cross-section of the history of Wakanda. And those kinds of special moments I can convey in new and exciting ways was just a very enticing opportunity. My name is Todd Harris. I'm the creator, showrunner, and one of the directors for Marvel's Eyes of Wakanda.
In ancient times, agents like me were known as the Hatut Zarazi. But now, they call us war dogs.
All right, episode 101. This is The Last Temptation of Christ. This is our hero, Winnie Harlow, as Noni, showing up to confront the ultimate bad guy, the Thulsa Doom of the situation, the Colonel from Apocalypse Now, the person that she is reflected in the most. What does he have to offer her? And what does he want from her? All these questions are kind of being put back and forth. Why aren't they fighting yet? Because she's determined to do her job. So this kind of conflict and this kind of doubt, we were trying to give our hero a quandary, a moral quandary to kind of deal with. Because not only is she dealing with a bad guy, but the fact that they are so similar should raise doubts in what she's doing. So any good fight, any good action sequence, it's tension. You have a moment of quiet, it's contraction, release, and that rhythm is the thing that we are always trying to pursue, just like any good story. It has its highs, its lows, its crescendos, its hooks. Like all these things are kind of at play now as we kind of build up this tension. So when it finally releases, there's some satisfaction. We have Cress with his charm and authority, guiding that silk-covered blade in between her ribs, trying to poke at her heart to get her to turn. But, as bad as the Hatusa Raze are, she's a trained Dora, and the only people badder than them are the Black Panther. And he knows this, because he's too smart not to know how dangerous she can be. So when this fight happens, it's more than calculation, it's passion. And we want to portray that, because not only are there principles involved, where you have a Wakandan who's no longer wanting to be a Wakandan, but you have two reflections of each other trying to fight for dominance. Noni is, in her heart of heart, a woman who always wanted to be a Dora, but she sees too much. And he was a man that looked into the abyss and blinked and decided to become the thing that Wakanda was trying to avoid. And incorporating some of these wushu and kung fu aspects into this, we have the drapery fight. There's so many references coming in here in terms of art style, lighting, classic American stuff, and also some Hong Kong cinema with a little bit of good old-fashioned American comic book action posing. But this was a very exciting fight for all of us to do.
Memnon! Memnon!
Episode 2, we move into the Homerian era of history. We have a character everyone's familiar with, one of the original superheroes of literature, Achilles. And what is Achilles, the greatest hero who's ever lived? What does that look like against a Wakandan, the most formidable culture and country that's ever existed on the planet Earth? So this was my opportunity. It was an idea that was stewing with me for a long time. As I'm a student of history, and the Ethiopian Memnon is a fixture in Homer's Iliad. In Homer's Iliad, he was an Ethiopian prince that helped support the Trojans and Priam to defend themselves against the Greeks. And he was every bit the match of Achilles, so much so he was favored by Zeus. So that is the myth of Memnon. But what if the myth of Memnon was the reality for a Wakandan? Because that's how you justify, that was how Homer would contextualize someone that fantastic in that era. And so putting Memnon as a real historical figure in the Homerian lore, bringing him into the Marvel Universe, what does that look like? And, making him Wakandan and kind of telling the story of history is not what you think it is. Because Homer is not necessarily history, it is an account that finds truth in some historical events, and it's the truth that the Greeks want to use in order to prop up their narrative, because it's a story told by the villains, because they were the invaders. So this was the heavyweight bout for the show. Two big guys fighting it out for king and country. And What does that mean when you're fighting your best friend? Where do your principles and your obligations start and your love for your brother begins? And they come in violent conflict. And even at the very end of this, there's regret in every one of those blows. No! Coming to episode 3. Ultimately, this was inspired by like Jackie Chan movies. Who doesn't love Kung Fu? I was looking at copied cassette tapes of Kung Fu movies through my entire youth. I kind of lived and breathed this stuff. So having an Iron Fist and, always reiterating how amazing an Iron Fist is, because an Iron Fist, before they have the Iron Fist, in order to get that power, they have to walk into a cave with a dragon and then walk out. And there's a dead dragon, and they now have superpowers. So if they're good enough to beat a dragon without superpowers, what are they like now? And so you put that kind of person in Wakanda, and that is like a weapon of mass destruction walking around with intent. And so you see the military force of Wakanda kind of trying to contain this particular problem. And then you get a character like Basha, and Basha's a very interesting kind of character, very much and Jock did an amazing job portraying someone who is so fun-loving and so charismatic, but hyper competent. And so there's different types of Wakandans. Some who are very earnest and very competent, and some who are very gregarious and very competent. And so that is the exploration that we have the ability to do in this show, is showing that they are not a monolith of personality types. They are all types of them. And Basha is a person who's used to winning every much as Shirani is. So this kind of conflict is always fun to see when two people who know they're right, one of them has to accept they're wrong. And unfortunately, for the first time, Basha was the one on the losing side of this battle. And it is, it's a relationship story, because these are also two people who are attracted to each other, and they fancy each other, and they're used to being right. And what's that fallout look like? So it should be a little bit of romantic comedy, a little bit of Jackie Chan movie, and hopefully we threaded that needle so when you see these people duking it out, you can kind of see the relationship drama mixed in with it. The animation style is a collection of all of our different influences. I love Marvel because Marvel loves art. It is a franchise built on the drawn image, and they have a love for it that is palpable. So I always wanted to make sure that everything felt like it was done by hand as much as we could. When we started this, we had different touch points. We had some animated shows we were looking at. We were deciding whether we were going to be 2D or 3D. And as we pulled all of our influences together, we had a meeting one day and Dean Cornwell's name came up. He's an illustrator that I've always favored. And that kind of helped create a roadmap directly to where we wanted to go. In terms of character design, Ernie Barnes has always been a big influence of mine. The way he portrays bodies, he's a celebrated African-American artist. That depiction of African bodies was a big part of the design ethos I was trying to push. But the overall look and the painterliness and the illustrativeness was guided by Dean Cornwell. And, 24 other different art influences that kind of get wedged in there, because it wasn't just put two things in and watch it go. Making this work in a 3D space was quite the effort. And fortunately, we had Craig Elliott making sure not only could we get the look, but make sure that our team could replicate it over and over again.
You are not from our home.
I will be.
What? What does this even mean?
All right, here we are, episode 4. Every story has to come to an end. This was kind of our horror beat of the show, where, it's very driven by movies like Predator, Terminator. An unstoppable force comes in with completely unknown abilities, and it confronts people who are used to being at the top of the food chain. What do they look like when they're on their heels now? Not only are they tactically on their heels, but their worldview is going to be shaken to the core. So when we have this flash in the future and we see for the first time the one thing they knew which was impossible, which was the end of Wakanda, what does that do? How can they reconcile what they're seeing with what they know is impossible? Because they've met this woman who has things they've never seen, Anika Noni Rose, who with so much passion and grace and power, convincing these people, her people, that the world's going to end if they don't listen. That was the arc of this whole episode, and coming to terms with that and their duty. So we have our horror story, we have this bleak end of the world kind of ending, combined with action sequences and showing the technology that's being put in the display in the future. And this is the distant future, where you have this alien apocalypse that happens. Steve Husano plays Kuda like so passionately and so earnestly, and it contrasts perfectly with Zeke's portrayal of Tafari, and with the youth and that kind of hopefulness of like the better world he can build with his mind and his body, and tethering that Lethal Weapon kind of buddy comedy with a mentor and a mentee, but the mentee is not quite ready yet. That was the arc that we were always pursuing when we started this story, and threading all these different themes together. You know, it's a lot to juggle, but I would like to think we were able to stick the landing.
We fought back, but they still killed us all.
Thank you for stopping by in the world of Wakanda. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening.